Northern Region Tournament semifinals are happening as we speak. Welcome to the Fairfax Sports Report. I'm Paul Frummel, and we have a great show planned for you. Before we get to that, let's talk about the people that make this show possible, talking about our teammates. CCI Screen Printing. For all your screen printing needs at 703-978-0257. Triple Edge Lacrosse, the endless summer of lacrosse. www.tripleedgelax.com. Hey, and check out the website, www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Read news, insights from all the panelists you see here tonight. All right, guys, so as I mentioned, we have a great show planned. Eric Gilmore from the Connection newspapers, Monica Moore, Dave Bushenfeld from the Times community newspapers, all here to bring you an action-packed show. And right off the bat, we're going to jump into some news and notes that Dave Bushenfeld has compiled.
Yeah, we have 3 local members of the High School Hall of Fame here in Virginia now. Jim Reich, the head soccer coach for the girls over at Robinson Secondary School. He's been coaching over there for 25 years, 32 years total on the sideline. He has an overall record of 439, 103, and 40. He's won 4 state titles with the Rams. He is one of the new members of the Virginia High School Hall of Fame. One of his former players, Megan McCarthy, a lot of you probably know her. She was on the 1991 Women's World Cup team, and she also won the first state title for Reich back in 1984. She's going in as well. And Jeff Dietze, who was the DSA over at West Potomac for 33 years, he is also going into the High School Hall of Fame this year, so kudos to all of them. We also have some track news. South Lakes boys won their first ever Northern Region Outdoor Track and Field Championship this past week. AJ Price was the man for them. He had 3 first-place finishes in the 200, 400, and long jump, finished 3rd in the high jump, and was the anchor leg on the 2nd-place 4x400 meter relay team. First-year coach Alfred Buckley has done a great job with those guys. And on the girls' side, Lake Braddock won their 6th straight Northern Region title, which is phenomenal.
The Lake Braddock Bruins have been a powerhouse on the girls' track scene. Melia Koule winning, medaling in plenty of events, helping out the Bruins in that. But guys, we're going to jump right over to boys lacrosse. The Northern Region boys lacrosse bracket, as you can see, it was a great turnout, and you can see Annandale beating Robinson, Oakton taking care of Langley in the quarterfinals, Westfield beating Madison, and Woodson beat Chantilly. Annandale, Oakton, Westfield, Chantilly all in the semifinals, with Oakton and Chantilly advancing. Dave Bushenfeld, you had a chance to see that game.
Oh, it was an amazing game. Chantilly ended up winning that game 8-6, but it didn't look like they would for most of the game. They came into the game 16-0, undefeated on the season. They'd already beaten Oakton twice that year, but Oakton just came out on fire, had 16 shots in the first half. They were leading 2-1 at halftime, 5-4 after the 3rd quarter, but Chantilly's senior leadership really stepped up in that 4th quarter. With a little under 5 minutes to go, they took their first lead of the game on a really amazing shot over the shoulder by Kevin O'Neill. And then they never looked back. They ended up winning that game 8-6, first ever Northern Region title for the Chantilly Chargers.
Well, and I think that one really huge thing for Chantilly about that game is that so many of their games so far this season, they have had huge leads. They haven't really been tested, and they finally had a little adversity. They had to come back in the 4th quarter, but in the 4th quarter, they completely stepped up and outscored Oakton 4-1. And so that really shows that when they're called upon to do that, they really can step up. As you said, Dave, their senior leadership is sensational. There's 16 seniors on the team, and that's going to be really important for them going into the state final.
And they were missing one of those seniors, Tyler Ott, who was one of the leading scorers for the Chargers. He suffered a concussion in the game against Woodson 2 games earlier, had missed a couple of games, and they're hoping to get him back for the state tournament.
The Chantilly Chargers 16-0 so far this year, entering the Virginia AAA State Tournament. And we have some highlights to show of how exactly the Chargers got to the Northern Region final. Dave Bushenfeld, Monica Moore, you guys were there. Let's talk it through.
As you can see here, great goal by Chantilly, one of the few shots that they had in the first half. The goalie for Oakton was fantastic.
Yeah, the first two quarters were really all Oakton. Chantilly kept trying to tie the score. We saw a great goal there by Chantilly, but Oakton just was sensational, got off to quite the start on the offensive end.
In the Concord District Final, Oakton really brought it on in the fourth quarter, took a lot of shots, scored a lot of goals. Even though they didn't win that game, they gained a lot of confidence and found out that, if they just shot the ball, that they had a chance to beat Chantilly.
But one huge story for the Chargers all season has been Derek Kegeris back in the goal. He had 16 saves during the Concord District Final. He was also huge for Chantilly, and he was sensational against Oakton during the Northern Region Final.
Yeah, he had a little bit of a struggle there, obviously taking a lot of shots, but he came through when it mattered for them.
He has absolutely been a brick wall, and he's been helped out a lot on defense this year by Mike Quigg. And, of course, Quigg was the one who assisted that amazing shot by Kevin O'Neill that we just saw there, number 23 on your screen. Kevin O'Neill with that over-the-shoulder shot Dave talked about.
Yeah, and there's Corey Afariat putting in one for good measure to give them the 8-6 victory.
And guys, let's take a look at how Chantilly got to this 16-0 record. Undefeated in the Concord District, undefeated in the Northern Region. Eric Gilmore.
Yeah, I mean, taking care of West Springfield. Jefferson had a test against Woodson, as we see. I mean, blasted Mount Vernon. Robinson was another close game. And outside of that, they really haven't had many close games. And Chantilly answered a lot of questions with the fact that they're going to the state tournament and won the region title. This is a team that never even won a district title. So many seniors obviously stepped up when it counted for the Chargers.
And looking at the second half of their schedule, as you can see, not many out-of-region games that they played. Most of the games they played were in region. You see South County there in the district semis, district finals, Washington and Lee. But what you should point out is the Concord District is probably the best district in the state. So playing in the Concord District, you're playing top opponents every day.
Well, I mean, I'm just looking at the two national level teams on the schedule. I mean, 18-0 over Mount Vernon, 18-5 over Washington Lee. Embarrassed both of those. I mean, had very few close games. A couple of the ones were within the Concord. I mean, we could see it in girls soccer. We've seen it in baseball. The Concord, to some level, the Patriot are the premier teams within the entire region and the entire state.
Look how close the district finals and the region finals were, playing Oakton 9-7 in the district final, 8-6 in the region final. So it's not like Oakton was getting blown out. They have dropped 3 to the Chargers, though.
Well, and probably their toughest game of the whole year was in that district semifinals. They won 6-4 over Westfield, but it was another come-from-behind win. They got a first-round bye in the district tournament, had a 10-day layoff between their last regular season game against South County and that game against Westfield. They looked a little rusty, but they were able to shake it off in time and pull out that win.
Obviously, you see Westfield and Oakton, Chantilly, they've played each other so much now that they know each other. They know what they're going to do, and it makes for such interesting games.
We talked about the zone defense that Westfield employed in that game. The question is now, what are they going to be able to do at the state level? I mean, we talked about the Concord District and how it's been able to dominate within the region. But when you broaden that, where is lacrosse throughout the state? Obviously, Chantilly probably should be able to make a run with 16 seniors. I mean, you saw the discrepancy in points for and points against. Now they're really going to be battle tested, and they're going to have to win those close games.
Well, and a lot of people are expecting for it to be Chantilly and Oakton in the final. I got to talk with Tony Gray before the game and talked with him about the Concord District Tournament and then playing Chantilly in the Northern Region. And he said the one thing that his team took away from the Concord District Tournament loss was that they learned that they could actually beat Chantilly, and certainly they would have even more confidence, I think, going into a game in the state finals. When you play a team 4 times, there's not that much new that you can throw at them. You're familiar with all the personnel, so it would be great to see those two teams square off again.
And guys, in a few moments, we're going to talk to the man himself, Chantilly head coach Kevin Broderick. But before we get to him, I want to mention that we just taped a fresh batch of FSN Fast Breaks for your viewing pleasure at FairfaxSportsNetwork.com. Monica Moore talked about the Northern Region Girls Lacrosse Final. Dave talks about the Northern Region Boys Final that we've been talking about right now. And me and Eric Gilmer, we talk about softball and baseball. So a lot of great stuff for you guys to watch at FairfaxSportsNetwork.com.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Oakton and Chantilly do meet in the state final. That region final game could either be a killer for Oakton or it could really give them some confidence. They had that game won until the very end of the game. They felt like they deserved to win that game, and it'll either totally ruin their season or it'll give them a lot of confidence heading into that game if they face them again in the state final.
Well, Dave, let's look at what the Chantilly Chargers have to do to get to that state final. As you see, they play the number 3 from the Northwest District in the first game.
Yeah, the Northwest Region Tournament is happening as we speak right now, so they'll be facing the number 3 seed out of there. You'll see Western Albemarle will face the Northwest number 2 seed. Oakton already knows who they're playing, local school Broad Run. And Annandale, who won the play-in game with Westfield by 1 goal, they will face Northwest's number 1 seed, whoever that may be.
I mean, there could be a potential excellent second-round matchup, in Annandale and Oakton. I mean, the Adams, going and winning the Patriot District Final in fantastic fashion the way they did, could possibly make some noise, even though they got bounced in the region tournament. That's a team that's going to keep scrapping and try and get some things done.
And guys, in just a few moments, we're going to talk to head coach Kevin Broderick about this upcoming schedule in the state tournament. But Dave, I mean, do you see a team besides Oakton that can give the Chargers some trouble?
Well, I think Annandale, I've been a big Annandale fan all year long. I've been talking about how they should have been higher up in the rankings. But the way that they lost Oakton in the region semis, I don't know if they'd be able to get past the Cougars. I look for Chantilly and Oakton to meet again in the finals.
Well, let's see what head coach Kevin Broderick has to say about that. Coach Broderick, your team seems to enjoy winning titles. It's a year first for the Chargers. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Well, Coach, starting off, let's talk about what's it like to face a team like Oakton 3 times now and come out on top? How much confidence does that give the team?
We're very fortunate. We feel lucky. Oakton's a very fine team. They're well coached with Tony Gray, and they gave us all we can handle. In fact, as you know from watching the game, we're behind most of the game, and finally we were fortunate to come together and play our type of game, team ball game, and we were able to pull one out the other day.
Coach, I'm going to ask you to look ahead real quick. I mean, you talked to us a couple weeks ago, almost a month ago, and it was one game at a time. We're looking at the next game on the schedule. Talk about this next game on the schedule in the state playoffs. What's the mindset going in?
Okay, well, great. I am right now watching Albemarle and Forest Park play in their regional final. We are just looking one game at a time. It's a one-game season. I told my guys yesterday that it's almost like a brand new season. We have 4 days of practice, and we have to play well as a team on Saturday. If we do that, good things will happen, and we'll continue to play. If not, it's go home. And my guys don't want to do that just yet, fortunately.
Coach, I feel like when people talk about Chantilly, they talk a lot about your offensive firepower, and it's hard not to do that when you have players like Joe Fratter and Corey Ferriet. But I want to give you a chance to talk about your defense, because you got some great defenders, starting with Mike Quigg, who I understand is leading the team, I think, in forced turnovers, and is great with getting ground balls as well. So could you talk a little bit about your top defenders, what makes them so good individually and also collectively as a defense?
Well, thank you. It's very kind of you. The offense does get the press because they do put the ball in the back of the net, and they make the fantastic plays, like Kevin O'Neill putting one behind his back to beat Oakton the other night. But it is the defense is the heart and soul of our team, I think. It starts with Derek Kagris, the junior keeper we've got, who's had a fantastic season. And they're giving up about 3.75 goals per game and doing very well. Then you've got Quake, who's a senior leader back there, an all-region football player, and guy who does lead us. He's just a ground ball money type of guy. He started the drive that put the assist together for O'Neill the other night. We got Stevie Gambos and Taylor Mason, the other 2 long sticks back there, both juniors, play solid ball and really do a fantastic job for us. So the key to us is, I think, is playing good defense and doubling the other team's ground balls if we can do that, and try to limit our turnovers. We get a little crazy once in a while, but if we can do that, I think we have a good game.
Now, Coach, we were talking about how one of your toughest games of this year was the district semifinal game against Westfield. You had a 10-day layoff in between the end of the season and that game. You have another 10-day layoff this time between the region final and the first game of the state tournament. How do you avoid kind of falling into the same trap and shaking off the rust for this game coming up?
Well, 2 things happened in that Westfield game. 1, we were a little rusty, and 2, and we'd beaten them pretty easily the time before, so they came out with a zone, and it sort of threw us a little bit. We hadn't expected that coming from Westfield. I haven't seen them do that in years, so it was. I think that caught the guys off a little guard. It took a while for them, the first half, to get through that. This time, we'd have had a layoff. We'd taken advantage of the long weekend and gotten healthy. All season long, we've had about 3 guys out with different injuries, mono, sickness, you name it. And so right now, hopefully we're healthy. We got Tyler Ott just back, who missed the 2 region games, especially the Oakton Championship game. He's back, cleared, and ready to play. He's an all-region attacker, so it makes us that much more powerful, I think, offensively and defensively. Helps us clear the ball. He's a great playmaker out on the field. So,
Now, Coach, you mentioned you're doing a bit of scouting right now. The team has been so successful, what they've been doing, 16-0. Do you plan on making any tweaks, any changes, or is it business as usual in the state tournament?
Well, Paul, it's hard to argue with success. I mean, if they're playing well, one of our strengths is getting the ball out. Our defense starts our transition. And if we can continue to do that, then I think you stay with that. And our athleticism shines in that type of environment. We've shown against Westfield the other day in the regions that we can play against the zone. We can play a slow down on 6-on-6 if you want to do that too.
Coach, it's a season of firsts, as Paul mentioned kind of in the open, introducing you, the first district championship, the first region championship. What would be a successful season for your team this year?
To play to their potential. That's all we talk about every day is getting better. And we talk about playing better as a team defensively, team defense up and down the field, making smart decisions and shot selection and everything else. So that's our goal. Play the best we can be. We don't think we've touched our potential yet, and that's what you're measuring yourself against, not what the score was or who you played. And of course, in this kind of tournament, anybody can go. You hit a hot team here, anything can happen. So we don't want to take any opponent lightly. We respect what they're doing. I saw the other night where Latin Valley traveled down to play Patrick Henry, 4 hours in a bus, and they didn't have the legs, and the other team was ready to play. They couldn't wait. So we don't expect an easy game on Saturday. We expect a real opponent, and we're going to give them everything we can. Being at home for the first time, I think it's going to be kind of exciting.
Coach, you and I talked a little bit about this after the game last Wednesday night, but your team did get off to a slow start, and you've had a little time to reflect on this. So what are the big things you noticed about your team in the fourth quarter? And not that you would wish it on yourself, but having your team face that type of adversity and to come from behind and win, how important do you think it was for your team to have that experience coming into the state tournament?
I think it's a great question. I think it was a very good experience for us to be pressured. They take away some of our strengths. Teams are making adjustments against us, and we're adapting to it. We're learning how to do that. And for us as coaches, to see the players recognize the situations is the biggest thing for us, so that they see it, they recognize, they see what they have to do, and they make their adjustments on the field as the game progresses. So it was really helpful for us, and it's always better when you win, obviously, but it was a good game, I think, up and down, very athletic. Their team played their hearts out. And our guys finally settled down and had some composure, and we made some smart passes at the end. We made some good decisions, and so we were fortunate.
Coach, do you think you'll end up facing Oakton again in the state finals?
Well, I don't know if we will or we won't. It doesn't matter to me. If it happens, we'd love to. As we talked about earlier, so many of our kids play with the Oakton kids in youth league, et cetera. So they're a lot of friends. They'd love to see them play. But we just want to play the best team we can if we get there. I mean, we're just talking about Saturday night, getting by Patrick Henry. If we can do that, then I'm sure we'll have a real challenge on our hands in the semifinals on Tuesday. But one game at a time, we're going to do it.
We'll let you get back to preparing for that next game. Coach, it's been a pleasure to have you on, and definitely good luck in the state tournament.
Thanks so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Coach.
Thanks,
Good night.
So, obviously, we've talked to Coach Broderick before, and Chantilly's, they've been on a roll. They came into the season with all this hype, with all this anticipation, and they've lived up to it.
Yeah, they have. There's certainly, I sense some intensity in Kevin Broderick's voice, but at the same time, I also sense some tension. I mean, I asked him that question and tried to put him on the spot and put him in a hole, and obviously he deflected that like a nice coach does. But at the same point, what would be a successful year? I mean, this team has 16 seniors. Granted, it's done some first, but they're the favorites right now, and that is a good situation to be in on one hand. On the other hand, when you're going to try and possibly beat a team for the fourth time, and you still have to run through some of these other teams, there could be some potential for some trouble.
And Monica Moore, let's just break down the girls' side now. We talk about teams that are used to the Northern Region tournament, used to state tournaments, used to getting titles. How about those Oakton Cougars?
Well, those Oakton Cougars were absolutely sensational in the Northern Region final. Coming into the game, Chantilly, of course, was the favorite, 15-1. They had defeated Oakton twice so far in the season, but of course, they only defeated Oakton by 1 goal in each of those games. But all that being said, with all that Oakton lost last year, they lost 10 seniors from their two-time state championship team. A lot of people did not think that Oakton could pull off the upset, but there was one person down on the field that certainly thought they could pull off the upset, and that was Ashley Keminer, their sensational senior midfielder. In the first minute and a half of the game, she got her first goal, and she never looked back. She had 2 more goals before the half, and if 3 goals wasn't enough for Keminer, well, then in the second half, she had 6 goals. She had 9 on the night. Some of her teammates stepped in and also contributed to scoring a little bit, but Ashley Keminer, you just could not stop her. She was everywhere. She won almost every single face-off, and this was a really good Chantilly team, which a lot of people, including myself, think that they'll be in the state final on June 7th. They have Brittany Grill, Liz Dunwoody, and Katie Stillwell, and all of those players stepped up in the Northern Region final, but there was just nothing to be done about Ashley Keminer.
It was funny covering Oakton this season. They had their struggles, lost a lot of girls from last year's team that won their second state title. A lot of times Jean Counts, the coach over there, would joke that she wished she could split Ashley Keminer in 2 and have her at different positions on the field during the games. But on Wednesday night, they just needed the one of her, and she was more than enough to get that win.
I'm going to relate this back to football season. Talking to Bruce Hanson, the Yorktown football coach, and we were talking about premier athletes, and he said early on the fact that you have a premier elite athlete that they're worth X amount of points. I mean, that obviously was the case with Kinnemer. I mean, this girl was not going to let her team lose, and she was probably worth 3 or 4 goals herself, and it ended up being the difference.
Well, guys, let's jump right into the highlights and watch the Ashley Keminer show, as we like to call it, looking right here.
Absolutely. Just keep your eyes on number 2 for Oakton. You're going to see a lot of her Ashley Keminer, a lot of her shots on the night. There's a nice one there. It was just all Keminer, but certainly some of the Chantilly players. Brittany Grill ended up with 4 goals. Liz Dunwoody and Katie Stillwell both had 3 for Chantilly. And certainly you can't say enough about Oakton's goalkeeper, Tori Morgan. In the last 5.5 minutes, she held Chantilly scoreless. There were several point-blank shots, and she stopped them all. So she was a huge contributing factor in that win. So here we see more of Chantilly. Brittany Grill there. She is just sensational, the Northern Region Midfielder of the Year. But it was just all Ashley Keminer, and some of her teammates starting to get into the effort too, contributing. And that's the big question for Oakton going into the state tournament, is where they can get some other scoring from other than Ashley Keminer.
You have to feel bad for this Chantilly girls team. They only have 2 losses on the season. A last-second loss to Robinson in the Concord District Final, and then a 2-goal loss to Oakton in the Northern Region Final. Only 2 losses of the year to be in the 2 title games is going to hurt a lot for them.
But what you find out a lot is those teams that lose those 2 championships early on sometimes end up going to the state final and possibly winning the state final. You said you expected them to be there, but psychologically, if they've lost 2, they might not want to lose a 3rd one.
And guys, you want more of Monica Moore talking about the Northern Region Girls Final? Check out our website at www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Monica discusses the Girls Lax Region Finals exclusively at fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Hey guys, we're going to take a quick break, regroup, jump into some diamond action, jump into some soccer action. We will be right back. Welcome back to the show. Now we're going to jump right into the diamond, talking about baseball and the Northern Region Baseball Tournament. The quarterfinals happened on Memorial Day with doubleheaders at South County and doubleheaders at Robinson and Eric Gilmore. Lake Braddock looking pretty good.
Well, Lake Braddock, absolutely dominated that game, 20-8. Westfield didn't have any pitching left after downing Edison in the opening round, 8-1. That game was actually at Edison, the second seed out of the National District, but Westfield didn't have anything. They were throwing in pitchers almost per batter. Lake Braddock erupted. Now have 20 wins, actually 21 wins, because we'll talk about that here in a second. But at the same time, Shane Halley had a grand slam. Shannon Mark had 2 hits, and Lake Braddock just absolutely dominated that game.
This is the 17th straight win for Lake Braddock on the year, which is just unbelievable. They scored 9 runs in the bottom of the first inning. 9 runs. Most teams don't score 9 runs in a whole game. They scored in the first inning, including that grand slam by Shane Halley. They led 15-2 after 2 innings. 15-2 after 2 innings, just unbelievable. I mean, Westfield has big bats, but they just could not get it done against Lake Braddock.
Lake Braddock is clearly the hottest team right now in the Northern region. I believe 17 now 18 with the result today, wins in a row. So they have the pitching, they have the hitting, they have everything together. And talking to Oakton head coach Scott Rowland after his team beat Stonebridge, he was a little nervous to play the Bruins, and you can see why. They just have everything going for them.
Well, the fact is, Lake Braddock doesn't have the premier pitcher. I mean, he's actually hurt. I know Shane Halley's gone a couple innings, went 2 innings in the quarterfinal game. But at the same time, the ace that they thought they were going to have, they didn't have. So they've had to piecemeal some things together, and they still got big hitting from the 2 Lindenmuth brothers. And they can generate runs. I mean, the fact is, this team last lost on April 1st. I mean, I'm not good at math, but it's about May 27th right now, and so it is the 28th. That's a good thing. But the fact is that's almost 2 months worth of stuff, and so the fact that they notched another win tonight, I mean, they're going to the state tournament, and possibly could make some noise there. I know there's quality baseball throughout the state. At the same time, they don't have one great thing. They don't have one great player. They've got a whole team worth of stuff. And this team's been good year in and year out. I mean, first district title since 2004. They've won 18-plus games, now 5 seasons in a row. I mean, and that's a hard thing to do. Only 20-3, 21-3 after today's result. Lake Braddock absolutely just tearing through the season.
Well, and you look at Oakton. I mean, they might have lost to Lake Braddock today in the district or the region semifinals, but this was the 8th time in the last 9 years that they've made it to the region semifinals, which is just phenomenal success over the last 9 years. It's going to be a tough way to end for all the seniors that they have on that team. A lot of people remember 2 years ago they lost that heartbreaker in the state final. Finally got a title under their belt in the region last year, but then lost again in the district final this year to Chantilly, then get knocked out in the semifinals, so they don't advance. It's just got to be a bitter taste in their mouth knowing that they were that close to a state title a couple of years ago, and now they're kind of coming away with nothing at the end of it.
In that 2006 Oakton team lost to Lake Braddock in the region finals, so they have a history there. Oakton has a history with those Patriot District teams. But jumping back to the Bruins, I did a story on Brian Durner about a month ago. I tagged him the Lake Braddock's de facto ace because he came in and did a wonderful job, earned all region honors as a pitcher for the Bruins, and he has really been a revelation for this pitching staff, and he's been a big reason that Lake Braddock has just continued to win.
Well, it's funny, it stunk to not have Shane Halley for most of the season, but if he had been going all the time, maybe Durner wouldn't have stepped up and been the ace of that team. And he pitched tonight in the game against Oakton, got the win, I'm assuming. Don't have all the stats on that, but he has been pretty fantastic this year.
So Lake Braddock is advancing to the Northern Region Finals. And let's take a look at the lower half of the bracket to see who the Bruins may be facing in the finals. You can see there Robinson beating Yorktown from the Concord District, West Springfield taking care of Langley, so the Patriot District also representing Patriot District again. South County upsetting Madison, and this Madison team just kind of had a real down year, but I'm sure Pudge Jorman will pick them back up.
Well, you want to talk about pitching. I don't know if any of you out there were watching that Robinson-West Springfield game, but I was there, and it was phenomenal. There were 2 sophomores on the mound, Austin Freer for Robinson and Bobby Wall for West Springfield, and they were just matching each other 0 for 0 in the score column. You talk about Bobby Wall, this is a kid, took the mound for the start in the Patriot District Final against Lake Braddock, only lasted to the first batter of the 2nd inning, only gave up 1 hit, but he had 5 walks, gave up 3 runs, and they yanked him. Could have shattered his confidence, but Coach John James said he had no hesitation while putting him on the mound in that quarterfinal game against Robinson, and he came through the complete game, only gave up 2 hits in that game, had a career-high 13 strikeouts. He was just basically unhittable all night long, didn't give up a hit until 2 outs in the 4th inning, didn't have a 3-ball count until the last batter of the whole game after walking 5 in an inning plus the game before. So just a phenomenal story right there.
Well, to me, West Springfield is kind of a hot and cold team. No one knows what to make of them, almost like their football team. Sometimes they'll do well and sometimes they won't, and they've actually got a lot of football players. You look at Robinson, probably didn't have as much coming out of the Concord as the number 4 seed. Absolutely upset and shut out Yorktown, who had a 17-game region-high winning streak heading into that. Yorktown playing at home, and Robinson absolutely blasted them. But the fact is, is we talked about you have to have two pitchers to make it. You know, Lake Braddock, as we've seen, has no great pitcher, but they've got a combination of a couple that can get it done. We know about Mike Kent, who went tonight against Chantilly, you know, and the fact that he's a junior. Bobby Wall was getting these B games. He was playing the Lees, the Hayfields, the B-level and mid-level teams this year, and sometimes had 11 strikeouts, had a 12 strikeout game as well, but sometimes also wouldn't have his stuff. He did play a game against American Heritage in Florida and didn't fare too well. That was against a top-notch level team. And so this is the first time John James said after the game that this kid came out and stepped into the limelight, almost your coming out party, if you will, and really controlled the game, absolutely dominated. And West Springfield was in control, though they had to you know, win this game in dramatic fashion. One, with Andy Stallings' last inning hit, went only 3 batters in the in the bottom of the 7th to get the 1-0 win. And West Springfield, with their 4th walk-off game this season, they've also lost a couple in the last second. One against Lake Braddock, another against T.C. Williams. So this is a team that can win in the last second, but they can also lose in the last second as well.
Mike Kent, for my money, is pound for pound the best pitcher in the northern region. I know some Stonebridge Bulldogs might have something to say about that, but to have a solid number 2 behind him, that makes the Spartans pretty darn dangerous.
It certainly does. You know, another kid that's pretty darn dangerous is this Sowers kid who went tonight, East Carolina commit for Chantilly. I mean, South County, we thought that they were going to be a premier team, kind of mid-level. Jesse Beal absolutely blasted with West Springfield, I believe, in the middle of the season. They, however, couldn't touch Chantilly in the bottom half of that bracket on Monday over at Robinson. I mean, I know it was a big play there in the bottom of the 5th, Dave.
Yeah, well, Chantilly, they're known for their pitching most of all, but they had 7 runs in the game. They won 7-2 on 11 hits. Their bats really woke up. After they knocked off Oakton in the Concord District Final, Coach Kevin Ford was saying, you know, we have the pitchers to win the region, but our bats need to wake up, and they certainly did. One of their best hitters, probably their best hitter, Keith Morrisroe, their catcher, had a play. The man on first, he leaned into a curveball, tried to take his base. Umpire called him back, saying he had leaned into it, didn't try to get out of the way. Very next pitch, triple into the right center field gap, started a little rally, and they pulled away for the victory there. They can be a dangerous team if their bats are swinging like they were in that game against South County.
Well, they only swinging in the last 3 innings where they got all 7, of their runs. I mean, they were really struggling there at first, and it started the game 2 for 12 against South County pitcher Peyton Bartlett. But once they got to the reliever, they really started getting things going and pieced together 2 runs, 3 runs, 3 runs. And the Chargers now, you know, moved on, obviously, to play West Springfield tonight. But the fact is, do they have 2 pitchers? They pieced 2 pitchers together in the semifinal game, and they've got their ace in Sowers. They've got the recipe to make it to the district final.
Well, I wish that I was there at that game tonight. It's going to be Pat Summers going against Mike Kent, 2 of the best pitchers in the entire region. I'm sure it was a great matchup. Can't wait to find out who won that game.
Pat Summers, the Concord District Pitcher of the Year. They have a full bullpen of just fabulous pitchers over there at Chantilly. And one thing I wanted to mention before we jump into softball, you see in 2006 you mentioned Oakton versus Lake Braddock. 2007, Oakton versus South County. 2008, it's going to be a Patriot District and Concord District team. So you see this dominance between the Patriot and the Concord. And with these teams, I don't think that's going to end anytime soon.
Well, let's not pencil it in yet. I mean, we haven't got the result of this West Springfield game, and that's another team that could possibly, the last team to beat Lake Braddock was West Springfield, like I mentioned, on April 1. So West Springfield certainly, though they lost 12-8 in the Patriot District Final, has the potential to beat Lake Braddock, obviously. And then another game, as I mentioned, Lake Braddock West Springfield had a huge rally there in the bottom of the 7th and lost that game. So if West Springfield were to win tonight, there's no penciling Lake Braddock in as the region final.
Well, Chantilly is having a special season, though, so I wouldn't count them out. Won their first district title since 1991, back when Coach Kevin Ford was still in high school himself, which was kind of funny. And this is their first time in the Northern Region semifinals since 2000, back when they had big slugger Joe Kashansky hitting the ball out of the park for them.
And the question to me, without having any premonition as to how the result was tonight, is the fact is, are Chantilly's bats at that elite level when they're playing an elite pitcher? I mean, we know that the Chantilly ace can mow them down, but does Chantilly have the power to generate runs and to hit at least ground balls and put players in play. I'm not sure they do. So, I mean, we'll see what happens.
I say we all leave here early and see if we can catch the end of that game, because it's definitely a good one happening as we speak. But guys, let's jump over into softball now, where I made my home during the Memorial Day Monday. I got a chance to check out the first 2 games of a quadruple header at Falls Church High School, and boy, did I see some good ones. South County, the team that I believed was the front runner to win the Northern Region, they beat Madison to advance to the quarterfinals and then faced Herndon in the semifinals. Now, what happened there with Herndon is they got a pitcher back called Katie Reinex. And Katie Reinex, who had been injured for a full 2 months, she broke her ankle sliding into second the first game of their Richmond tournament. She had she pitched in relief a couple of games. This was her first game back, and she was lights out, striking out 10 Stallion batters to give Herndon the win. Now, that's the first Concord team to make it to the semifinals.
Well, talking about Herndon, that is a great story. I remember talking about that back when it first happened. Katie Ronix going out with that injury, just devastating. They were one of the favorites to win the region back then, but it looked like their season was dashed when she went out. And I remember saying that, even if she did make it back, it's her push-off foot when she's pitching, probably still wouldn't be that effective, but to throw like she did in that game and get the win over a team like South County, just a phenomenal story.
Yeah, South County, undefeated throughout the Patriot District, had to hang on to get that Patriot District final. They had the pitcher of the year and sophomore Chelsea Dunham. I mean, they had a good pitcher. I mean, the fact is, Reinex was just that good for them to advance to the semifinals.
Well, the first batter of the game ends up reaching home plate for the only score of the game. So you can see Chelsea Dunham was on as well. I think she induced 11 or 12 pop-ups to the infield. So she definitely had movement on her pitches. Now, I mentioned Herndon was the first Concord team. There are 2 more Concord teams that advanced to the semifinals, but one of them was not Centerville. Centerville, 12-0 during the regular season in the Concord District, one of the best teams in the region. Everybody had them penciled in for the Northern Region Finals. Well, they ended up losing in the Concord District semifinals to Herndon. They faced Langley in a stellar game. 2 prize fighters, a little old cliche, going back and forth. Centerville dropped down early, comes back and forth. Langley was down to their last out in the bottom of the 7th. Up comes Kelsey Green, their stud, ropes a double to left field, scoring 2 runs to tie the game up again. And then Langley ends up winning in the bottom of the 8th on an error. Just, you hate to see it, but an error, a swinging bunt that thrown to first wide, and Langley ends up beating Centerville.
Well, and we talked about the Chantilly girls lacrosse team and how heartbreaking it was for them to lose in the finals of the district and the region. Centerville looked far and away like the team to beat in the entire region, and then to lose in the semifinals and then the quarterfinals of the region tournament. Just a tough way to end. You talk about a pitcher like Brianne Peace going on to George Mason. She's going to do some great things over there. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow for all those Centerville girls who had such high hopes for this season.
One thing I was so extremely impressed with is, the Wildcats were definitely crushed. Freshman Kara Donovan, who had the error on the throwing error, she was obviously beside herself. And the first thing head coach Rick Farrick tells me is, I love this girl. This girl is our teammate. We care. She went 3 for 5 at the plate, so she had a great game at the plate. I mean, this is our teammate. She's with this team. She's going to learn from this. She's going to come back. She's going to be better. That's all he really wanted to talk about, is how good this young freshman, who was second team All Concord District, how good she was for this team.
The fact is, it's almost sports psychology 101. We saw it with West Springfield in the Patriot District Final. If you're up a run and you give up that game-tying run in the bottom of the 7th, more often than not, your team is going to lose, because psychologically you've been broken at that point. And frankly, that's what happened.
And I got a chance when Brianne Peace started the game. Obviously, we've spoken very highly. I got a chance to say hello to her father, who's a big fan of the show. And she pitched well. A lot of errors behind her. I think she gave up 4 runs, but 3 of them were unearned. Jessica Farrick comes in. Another, we talk about that dual Centerville pitching staff. She does a great job. Gives up that 1 hit to Kelsey Green, and who can blame her? Kelsey Green is a great batter, ropes a double, and you got a tie game. So moving on, we mentioned 3 Concord teams in the semifinals. We have one going to the lower half of the bracket. You see Westfield, and Westfield is a surprise to me at least, because when I talked to head coach Dean Farrington before the season, they had lost so much Division I talent that he told me, he said, right now we're just learning to tie our shoes. And that quote stayed with me, and you know what? They learned they learned to do all the Boy Scout knots and all the turns and all that, because right now they're in the Northern Region semifinals. They beat Yorktown, which I'm sure Eric has a problem with. Eric, how do you think Yorktown was able to lose that game?
Well, shame on Yorktown. I mean, they didn't put up much of a fight. I mean, being at home, almost like the boys, and Brianna Hannafin, Hannah Ballman, among others. I mean, this is a team that had only lost 1 game all year. This is a team that beat O'Connell, who won the state championship, who won the WCAC championship. I mean, this is a team that was poised for big things, and I've been touting them all year long. And then here I am eating my words. You know, Westfield, congrats to them, certainly, but Yorktown didn't put up much of a fight. Obviously, Westfield, the fact that they're in the Concord facing quality teams night in and night out, I mean, we can look at the girls' soccer bracket and see it. The power is in the Concord, and the next time I tout some national level team, just slap me in the face. But more power to Westfield. The fact that they did reach the semis.
Well, Westfield, they went 7-5, one of 4 teams to go 7-5 in the Concord district this year, 4-way tie, and they handily beat Yorktown 10-3. So they had their way. And then facing McLean, and McLean, again, another top team from the Liberty District, they handle McLean 3-1. They're in the semifinals. And then you have Robinson. And the game that is very interesting to me was that Stonebridge-Robinson game. That was a rematch of last year's Northern Region final with Robinson coming out. Robinson's the defending Northern Region champs. They lose a bunch of players as well. Dorian Shaw comes to mind, who's just hitting dingers over at Michigan. And Robinson advances as well. So 3 Concord teams in the Northern Region semifinals.
Well, you talk about Westfield as a team that lost a lot from last year. I don't think anybody lost as much firepower as Robinson did. You talk about Dorian Shaw, one of the best hitters ever to come through this area. And for them to still be here in the semifinals is just phenomenal for that team. They're not going to give up their Northern Region crown without a fight.
Championship game Friday night, 6:30 at Yorktown High School.
It's a big party over here at Yorktown. You've got boys soccer, you got girls soccer, you've got, I mean, everything is happening at Yorktown. Mike Krufeld, the director of student activities over there, has been excited. He thought he was going to have some teams in there. Only has Yorktown, I guess, in the semifinals of the soccer game, so that's the only team available. But the place to be on Friday is going to be Yorktown.
And make sure to get there early because parking could be tight.
And it is at a premium. Trust me, I've got a parking ticket there before.
All right, guys. Well, speaking of soccer, let's jump right into that boys soccer bracket. Another bunch of semifinals that are happening tonight. And boys soccer, again, we talk Concord, and Dave Bushenfeld break it down for us.
Well, it's pretty much all about the Concord, especially on the top half of that bracket. You see, I was surprised that T.C. Williams was the #1 seed out of the Patriot District. They did knock off Langley, who was one of the powerful teams out of the Liberty in the first round, but then they ran up against Robinson, and Robinson is always a tough team. They fell to Robinson 1-0. Then you look at Westfield, had a tough loss on the last-second goal to Herndon in the Concord District Final. Then they had to take on the state champion Jefferson in the second round of the region tournament there. Actually won the game pretty easily, 3-1, went up 2-0, and never looked back in that game. That was a big win for those Bulldogs. Yeah, and Eric's favorite team, Yorktown, finally gets a win for him in one of the sports. They had to go to overtime to beat Fairfax in the first round, and then beat Lake Braddock 2-1 in the second round. And you look at Stonebridge, knocked off that Herndon team, who had such a great year under Coach Sean Lanigan, who came back after a few years off. But they fell to Stonebridge 1-0 in that game.
I mean, you've got an elite level with these boys soccer, and then you've almost got that second-tier level. And in Yorktown, I mean, you look at that laundry list here. They're in the quarterfinals. They lost to Robinson. They lost to Westfield. They lost to Jefferson. I mean, they've got 4 losses this year. I mean, in all close games. So, Yorktown's going to have to get some things done to beat Stonebridge tonight. We obviously don't know the result of that game, but I think they're in the middle tier. And you're going to have to do something considerable to get to the region final.
And you talk about teams that kind of have a bitter taste in their mouth after the season's over, and I say Herndon, who had so much expectations. I mean, that's a tough draw playing Stonebridge in the quarterfinals, and it was a close game. Stonebridge won 1-0, And you see a team like Westfield, who was the second seed from the Concord District. Herndon was the first, and Westfield plays the third team from the National District, Falls Church. And then they get a team like Jefferson, and again, Jefferson's a great team. They're defending state champs, but I believe that they played a little above their level, and to get that #1 seed in the Liberty District. I mean, if I'm Herndon, I'd prefer to play Jefferson over Stonebridge, but that's not how it turned out.
Well, Jefferson's a shadow of his former self. I mean, let's face it. While they had a great season, they lost the majority of their team. The fact is, kudos to Westfield, for getting to the semifinals. It seems like this is an overriding theme. Westfield overachieved softball. Now, we're talking boys soccer. Again, it's the Concord District. Night in and night out, when you're facing the best teams, you're going to improve. Whereas in the national, if you're beating up teams 12-0 or 4-0 in soccer, you're not improving. You're essentially scrimmaging. So that's the difference that you see, the level of competition from top to bottom.
And speaking of one last thing on Jefferson, they lost all of their offense from last year, all of it except for one goal, and that was scored by the goalkeeper. So they lost everything, and kudos to Sean Burke. They got another district championship. We said they may have overachieved a little bit, but wow, did they reload.
Well, I don't think anybody can say they're surprised that Westfield's in the semifinals now, or Robinson. Both of them have been two of the top teams in the region this year. Each won one time when they faced each other in the regular season. Robinson won the first game. Westfield knocked them off in the district semifinals to get to that final game against Herndon. That's going to be a fantastic game. The winner of that, I think, has the edge on Friday in the region final.
But you have to keep in mind, and we talked about Yorktown, if Yorktown gets there, they're playing at home on the same familiar surface in front of the same familiar fans that they always get. That could be a big advantage.
They will be playing at home, but Westfield already beat Yorktown 2-1 at home, actually 2-0 at home earlier in the regular season. So I like them to come out of that one.
Hey guys, are you tired about talking about the Concord?
Never.
Well, we got a lot of Concord. Speaking of a Concord party, the regional girls tournament bracket. I don't see another district in there. I see a bunch of Concord teams, and as you can see, Centerville talk about a team. We talk about all these teams that lose so many players, overachieving. Centerville knocking off Stonebridge to get to the quarterfinals to play Westfield, who beat Madison. Chantilly there beating South County. Robinson beating Woodson. You have a clean sweep for the Concord District, Dave.
I mean, let's go ahead, Dave.
Well, I'm just going to say, I have to admit, Warren Williams, great coach, but I was shocked to see that Centerville made it that far. Obviously they lost in the semifinal game to Westfield, but what an amazing run that they have had in this postseason. You want to talk about a team that lost everything. They lost everything from last year, either to graduation, to injury with Jenna Richmond, the freshman phenom, tore her ACL, out for the year. They had a couple of girls that decided they didn't want to play soccer this year, ended up just doing track instead.
Jordan Grant, who got a gold medal at the Northern Region Championship.
To lose all of that and to still be there, if they had won that game, they would have been playing in their third straight region final. They won the last two. Just what an amazing job of coaching by Warren Williams. And actually his assistant is none other than Megan McCarthy, who's going into the Virginia High School Hall of Fame.
Well, it couldn't have happened to a nicer coach. He's one of my favorites, and they're going to reload again. They're going to get Jenna Richmond back, and they'll be right in the hunt again next year.
Well, the fact is, let's go ahead and propose an amendment. Let's just put 6 Concord teams in every single region final. Only put 2 national teams in, and we'll just call it even. The 5th Concord team right now, I feel like, could at least get past the first round. That's how consistent, how good this district is. You look, Centerville, Westfield, Chantilly, and Robinson, you can't go wrong. Obviously, the district champs being Robinson, probably have the inside track to go and get that. We talked about Centerville possibly overachieving, but there were some heavyweights that were taken out in this process. West Springfield, Madison, among others. So, the fact is, any of these teams could win. To me, Robinson right now would have the inside track.
Speaking of the Hall of Fame, Coach Jim Reich, we mentioned at the top of the show, has his team in the semifinals.
Yeah, Coach Reich has won 9 region titles in his tenure at Robinson. He's hoping to add a 10th this season. And Coach Goddard over at Westfield is hoping that they don't make it to that final game because they've already lost to them twice this year, including the Concord District Final. Then you look at a team like Chantilly. Not a lot of people had them pretty high on the list after the beginning of this year. Melissa Bibby came from Langley over to Chantilly. they kind of struggled. They had a lot of talent, but they didn't really live up to that talent. But they're definitely turning on at the right time now. Knocked off South County, a team a lot of people thought had a chance to go to the region final. They beat them 2-1 in that quarterfinal game. But I just think in the end, Robinson just has too much speed, and I would look for them to get past Chantilly in that game.
Well, that game ending right about now, so we'll find out soon. But one team, Westfield, I want to talk about them. We already know that they are in the region final. And when I covered Westfield playing Madison there in the second round of the district tournament, of the region tournament, head coach Chris Goddard, who rivals head coach Jim Reich in experience and success, gave me a bit of a tongue lashing. He said, I look during the basketball season and I see Westfield basketball, Westfield girls basketball, and I haven't seen much of my team. And I say, Coach, Robinson has it has all the success they've had, and Chantilly has the great storyline with a brand new coach. I mean, yeah, you may have gotten kind of lost in all these Concord storylines with Centerville losing so much. Here's Westfield, steady as always, making their way to the region final.
Well, and you look at Robinson, they just have so much experience coming back. Only a bunch of sophomores, but a lot of them played last year. Had a heartbreaking loss in that semifinal round to eventual state champion Lake Braddock, went down in penalty kicks. And talking to Coach Reich the other day after he got into the Hall of Fame, he was saying the team learned last year that we don't want it to go down to penalty kicks. We don't want to decide it in extra time. So they were hoping to get the win over Chantilly in regulation this time around.
I mean, you look at Westfield right now. I mean, 3 games within the region, and they've outscored their opponents 11-3. So the fact is, they're playing well. Obviously, that's somewhat of a discrepancy. The fact they had a 7-0 win over Washington Lee of the National District in the first round. But at the same time, they really haven't had a really close game.
Well, guys, we have a little bit more time, and what we like to do when the seasons wind down, we like to make some predictions. And let's just start. I know games have happened, and we're a little behind. But finals are happening this Friday, so who do you think, and I'll go through each sport, who do you think will be the champions in each sport? I'll name them off for you, Eric. Softball, we have Herndon, Langley, Westfield, and Robinson alive in the semifinals as of earlier today. Who do you think advances and wins the Northern Region?
I'm going to jump on the Rhinex train. Obviously, I think the fact that they have her back healthy is a huge boost to that team, only the 3rd seed out of that district. I think she powers them to the region title.
I'm jumping on the Langley bandwagon myself. If you can knock off Centerville, you got my vote.
Well, I'm with Herndon as well. Rhinex, what I saw was just unbelievable. Now, don't count out Aaron Henning over at Robinson. Robinson is the reigning champs. We'll see, but I like what Herndon has been doing. So Langley could have beaten them already, but right now I like what Herndon's doing. Jumping over to baseball, we mentioned it before. You have Lake Braddock in the finals, either West Springfield or Chantilly playing them. Can West Springfield or Chantilly beat the Bruins?
I'm going to go on a little bit of a limb. I think West Springfield has the pitching. I mean, the problem is they would have to kind of counter with the wall kid if they did win tonight and wouldn't go with their ace Kent. And the fact is they beat Lake Braddock before. The team's played 4 times, so Lake Braddock's won 3 of them. I know Lake Braddock's been on a roll. At the same time, I think West Springfield would have, if they beat Chantilly tonight, which I'm assuming that they did, I think they would have something for the Bruins.
I wouldn't assume that, but either way, whoever wins that game, Lake Braddock is just by far the hottest team in the region right now. If they lose, it'll be shocking. I actually think that they will go on and win the state title this year.
I'm with you, Dave. I believe that no one's going to beat head coach Jody Rutherford's squad. I mean, you want to be a hot team entering the tournament, and my goodness, are they a hot team? I'm going to take the Bruins as well. So we're going to move over to girls soccer. We know Westfield's in the final. What Concord team can beat them, either Chantilly or Robinson? Is it Robinson's game, or can Westfield take it all away?
Personally, I think Jim Reich, I mean, Hall of Fame, adding the 9th, the 10th region title to go along with the 10th district title, I think would be the conclusion of a perfect week for him. I have Robinson as a shoo-in.
I agree with you there. I mean, they only have 1 loss on the season. It was kind of a fluke at the beginning of the year against Stonebridge, but they're just too much speed, too much quickness. They'll get the win.
That's 3 straight then, because I believe Robinson also has the edge, and head coach Chris Goddard's going to give me another tongue lashing. All right, so moving on to boys, and we don't know who has advanced yet, but we do know that Robinson, Westfield, Yorktown, and Stonebridge all made it to the semifinals happening tonight.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think right now, looking at it, I'm still deciding. The fact is, let's go with Westfield. They've done well lately, and I'll have the Bulldogs in there.
Whoever comes out of that Westfield Robinson game is going to win the region.
I'm not sure. I'm going to say Westfield, just to say it, to give some Bulldog love. But guys, what an action-packed show we just had. A lot of Northern Region action going on. Make sure everybody heading out on Friday to watch some of these region finals to come say hello to me. And also, while you're at it, before you say hi to me, check out FSN on the web at www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com. Hey, CCI Screen Printing for all your screen printing needs. 703-978-0257, one of our great teammates. Another one of our great teammates, Triple H Lacrosse. The endless summer of lacrosse, www.tripleedgelax.com. Well, guys, again, make sure to come say hello to me, Dave, Eric. Say hi to BJ as well. He'll be out there. Another great week of Northern Region sports, and I wish it never ends, but it's about to end pretty soon. So we'll see you later.